Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week, 10 days. In today's video, we'll also have a look at the CFSB2 for the next month or so. We've got this warming event going on in the stratosphere. I did a second update yesterday afternoon talking about the warming event that's going on in the stratosphere over the North Pole at the moment. So we'll have a look at CFSB2 long-range charts. If there's any signs of something a bit colder coming up for the end of March and into April. We'll start off with the CET as well. So a lot going on, but before I get on with that, just very quickly to mention the ads that Gaz Weather did. So there's links to articles on all pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most pages, so you open up the content when you watch them, it close back up again. And we're also trying out some ads from Amazon. These are not related to Gav's shop. So you don't need to do any shopping at Amazon with these ads. We simply get paid because they're there and you are seeing them. You can click through them if you like, but you don't have to go off and do any shopping. Gav's shop is still there, so if you want to do any shopping at Amazon, do it through Gav's shop, and then we get a revenue thing on the things that you are purchasing. But on all the other pages, for instance here on the home page, you might be seeing some ads from Amazon. They are not related to what you buy. So just engage with the ads, really does help to pay for our website. Thanks very much for doing that. Going to start off with Central England temperature. So with colder than average, and we're colder than we have been at any point through the winter of 2015-2016. So we've got well into March, and well, look at this, we're about a degree colder than average. We provisionally stand at 4.1, so we've almost gone under 4 degrees. We've also almost gone under 4 degrees Celsius down into sort of 3 Celsius territory, and we're around 1 degree below average, 0.9 degrees below average. So as I say, this is colder than we've been at any point throughout the whole of the winter in the start of the spring, and that is provisional up to the 9th of March. So it's been a pretty cold start to the spring, to say the least. Now, if you didn't see yesterday's second video that I did yesterday afternoon, just a quick recap on that. So we've got the stratospheric warming taking place in the stratosphere in the upper atmosphere over the North Pole. This is at 30 HPA, so it's not at the very highest level of the stratosphere in the atmosphere. The very highest level is 10 HPA. This is just a little bit lower down. But with virtually off the scale, or we have gone virtually off the scale in terms of this stratospheric warming that has occurred. Southern stratospheric warming as well, because look how quickly it shot up as we've got in towards March. I think we're just beginning to start to tick back down now. We can't stay at this level in the stratosphere for very long. So this will start to move downwards again. But whether this has done the damage, and we'll get some blocking out of this over the North Pole over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have to wait and see. That certainly is a very dramatic warming event that has taken place at 30 HPA over the North Pole. Now, not a great deal of evidence of blocking or cold weather in the next couple of weeks with this GFS ensemble. So deal with the temperatures first of all. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average. We're about average now. We're going to stay around average through the weekend into the start of next week, maybe even ticking a little bit below average as we get through into the start of next week. But then the trend through the second half of next week looks like it's up, so we have got a bit of a warm-up going on there into next week. That's really just as the high pressure is changing its position slightly. I think I'll show you the charts in a moment, but we're basically going to keep high pressure dominated weather into the second half of next month. And then we go through to the final stages of next month, which is March, I should say, going to the final stages of the ensemble with these temperatures. And we see that overall the trend is to stay a little bit above average, but we have got some members of the ensemble that are going quite cold. You can see them here with these coloured lines. They do go cold, some of the members, but they aren't in the majority. The majority of the pack is generally still keeping it fairly mild into the end of the month. This is the 25th of March just here, so not quite into the end of the month, but getting towards the latter stages of the month with this ensemble. In terms of precipitation, prediction, well, we can say that we've got a lot of dry weather coming up for the rest of this week, into weekend, and inside of next week as well. Hardly any precipitation spikes at all. After that, we do get some precipitation coming through, but not a great deal, really. There's some rainfall spikes moving through, but you wouldn't say it's a particularly wet spell coming up. I think we've probably had the wettest spell of the month, which occurred yesterday. It was a real deluge yesterday. I think it probably had the wettest spell of the month. Well, maybe some precipitation later next week and into the final week of March. But overall, generally, it looks like staying fairly dry and reasonably mild, I would suggest, actually, through the course of next week. The temperature anomaly for the coming week looking like this. So near normal, a little bit below average still for the south, a little bit above average up in the north. Overall, no great deviation going on there. And I would expect these charts to be warming a little bit over the next few days as next week's weather particularly starts to come into focus. Very dry period coming up. The precipitation anomaly significantly drier than average there for the coming week. Again, that's the 10th through to the 18th of March. Generic charts, here we go for Monday then. We've got high pressure over Scandinavia bringing in easterly winds. That won't be a desperately cold wind, but it will be cool, and it'll probably be dragging in quite a lot of cloud from the east. So I expect a fairly dry, cool, cloudy start to next week. We may get some sort of disturbance in the flow on Tuesday. That could bring a little bit of rain down to the south of the country. And then we go through to the middle part of next week, and we've got high pressure to the east, low pressure out to west. Starting to drag up a little bit more of a southerly there, so that explains why the temperatures are lifting up on that ensemble for the second half of next week. Starting to drag in some slightly milder air from the south, and that continues into the second half of next week, bringing those southerly winds up across the country. So that will give us a little bit of a burst of spring later next week. We'll see temperatures going into mid-teens Celsius with that, although you probably notice that over time pressure is leaking away, particularly out to the west, so probably bringing an increasing risk of showers, particularly to the west of the country. And then the weekend of the 19th and 20th of March sees low pressure starting to more definitively take over. It's all very slack and flabby, so it's not a desperately wet spell, but overall turning more unsettled there as we're going through into that third week of March, the 19th and the 20th, and this is the day 10 chart on the 20th of March. East of the Earth is very similar, so we've got that easterly on Monday, particularly for the south. I think the north will get a lot of fine and sunny weather, but for the south we're probably dragging in quite a lot of cloud and a fairly cool feel with that easy wind. That continues into Tuesday. By Wednesday, the high pressure is more or less back over the top of the country, so lots of dry weather throughout next week, and very quiet conditions too. The second half of next week just keeps that high pressure in situ, so unlike the GFS, which drags up more of a southerly influence and starts to threaten showers, particularly to the west, the ECM for next week is dry really from start to finish. This will be a very dry week next week under this ridge of high pressure, and very pleasant conditions. We haven't got that easterly flow to worry about either, so probably quite a lot of sunshine. Will be cold at night potentially, but fairly warm by day. We go through to day 10, which is Sunday 20th of March, and by then just signs that pressure starting to leak a little bit. We may be bringing some showery rain into west and south. Hard to say where we go beyond that, but I think overall the pressure will probably drop, and we probably start to bring this low pressure down from the north or west. So turning more unsettled, I would think, as we get through into the weekend of the 19th, 20th of March. Seems like the GFS and the ECM are both in agreement on that, but quite how it happens, a little bit uncertain. But it does look as though after potentially about a week of dry weather from now through to this time next week, it may turn a little bit more unsettled then over the weekend of 19th, 20th of March. Finally, just have a quick look at the CFS V2 before I go. So these are the 500 millibar height anomalies broken down to weekly periods. The first weekly period is from the 10th through to the 16th of March, showing this big ridge there up to the northeast. Low pressure is out to the northwest and down to the south, so generally the flow is going to be quite easterly. A lot of dry weather, fairly cool and potentially quite cloudy at times down in the south. Week 2, which is the 17th to the 23rd of March, this is similar to the GFS actually, with this ridge still there to the east. low pressure a little bit out to west. The difference is that we're doing something like that with the flow. So it means that we are pulling up sort of southerly influences a little bit. That's a warmer week there from the 17th through to the 23rd of March, and maybe turning more unsettled with time from the south and the west. And then quite a big flip around occurs for the final week of March. Of course, this encompasses Easter. We find a trough of low pressure setting up right over top of the country, and with a fair amount of blocking up to the north, there's probably quite a lot of cold air being entrenched into that trough of low pressure. So it's much cooler and much more unsettled there potentially for the end of March, and that covers Easter as well. We'll start the updates for the Easter holiday weekend at Gazwaviz this weekend, actually, so getting very close to beginning to think about Easter. And then the final week, this is week 4, the 31st of March through to the 6th of April, shows the ridge starting to come back to the north and the east of the country, with the trough sinking down to the south. So this could be quite pleasant, actually. Could be doing something like that with the flow. And again, early April, we could be starting to bring up more in way of southerly influences, which could be pleasantly mild. There's no sign of anything desperately cold there, and that's in relation to this sudden stratospheric warming event that we've got going on in the stratosphere over North Pole right now. There's no sign of anything desperately cold coming in, but overall you'll notice the colours are quite sort of orange-red over the pole. I'll just get rid of the camera and show you all of this orange and red up here is quite extensive high pressure. It's not quite aligned to deliver us particularly cold conditions for early April on this run of the CFS-V2, but all of this is sort of ridging, and it might not necessarily be exactly right, the positioning of this ridging. The overall suggestion is that there is a lot of high pressure there over the North Pole. We see that on many of the weeks that we've been running through with these charts as well. So I think we're going to wait and see about the end of March and early April. It looks like we'll probably turn unsettled later in March, probably have quite an unsettled Easter. As I say, Easter updates begin at the website tomorrow. Not tomorrow, over the weekend. But it looks like we're going to turn it more unsettled at the end of the month. But quite whether that's going to be cold unsettled or mild unsettled, we're going to have to wait and see. For the coming week to 10 days, I think you'll have a lot of high pressure influences, especially next week. So plenty of dry weather coming up, which will allow us to dry out after yesterday's deluge. So that's how it's looking today. Tomorrow we'll do JMA Friday, so I'll have a more in-depth look at the coming month with both CFS-V2 and also the JMA models. So come back for that. That'll take us into April. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.